Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Dr. Mary Ann Whiting. Today's ceremony marks the 81st anniversary of the commencement of Australian squadrons operating with Bomber Command. During the Second World War, Australian aircrew of the Royal Australian Air Force were trained in Australia, Canada and Rhodesia as part of the Empire Air Training Scheme. This scheme trained pilots, navigators, bomb aimers, wireless operator air gunners and flight engineers for service in the United Kingdom with the Royal Air Force. For the Australian air crews that were posted to the Royal Air Force's Bomber Command, many served with Australian Article 15 squadrons. However, the bulk of Australian air crews served with Royal Air Force squadrons. Bomber Command crews played a central role in the strategic bombing of Germany and took part in operations over Italy and France, including in support of the D-Day landings along the Normandy coast. Casualties were very high. Of the 125,000 men who served in Bomber Command, 55,573 men were killed, a staggering loss rate of 44.4%. This evening we remember those whose names are listed on the Roll of Honour and the survivors who returned home. We warmly welcome the family of Pilot Officer James Allan Kerby, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Air Vice Marshal Kim Osley and Mrs. Debbie Osley. We warmly welcome the Bomber Command Association members and families of Bomber Command veterans joining us this evening. Current members of 460 Squadron, Group Captain Matt Cottrell retired, representing the Air Force Association, and the Department of Foreign Affairs French visiting delegation. We also warmly welcome members of the Sings Social Motorcycle Club Australia from Sydney, New South Wales, and the Sikh Motorcycle Club from Melbourne, Victoria, and the Wrench and Pistons Club from Sydney, New South Wales, who have ridden here to raise awareness and pay tribute to the brave Sikh soldiers who served alongside the Anzacs from August 1914 onwards. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the name of more than 103,000 men and women who've given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Pilot Officer James Allan Kerby. James Kerby was born on the 13th of December 1913 in the Melbourne suburb of Richmond in Victoria. He was the only child of Edwin Kerby, an electrical engineer and veteran of the First World War, and his wife Rosina. After completing his schooling, James began working as a feature writer for 3XY Studios in Spring Street, Melbourne. In 1934, he married Patricia Lorraine Longstaff, and they had 2 children together, Valerie in 1934 and Dennis in 1938. When the Second World War broke out a year later, James was living in East Malvern with his family. James Kerby enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 31st of January 1942. He was mustered as aircrew and commenced his initial training at the RAAF base in Somers, Victoria. In April, he travelled to Wagga Wagga, where he attended the Wireless Air Gunners School before undertaking bombing and air gunnery training at West Sale in October. On the 12th of November 1942, Kerby was awarded his Air Gunner's badge before embarking for active service in January of the following year. Kerby arrived in England in early March and spent the rest of the month at a personnel reception centre in Bournemouth. In May, he was allotted to No. 27th Operational Training Unit at RAF Litchfield, where night bomber crews were trained on the Wellington medium bomber. He remained there until July 1943, where he was transferred to No. 1667 Heavy Conversion Unit at RAF Lindholme to undertake training on heavy bombers, including Lancasters and Halifax 4-engine bombers. On the 15th of September 1943, having completed his training, Kerby was transferred to his first operational unit, No. 460 Squadron of the Royal Australian Air Force. Based at RAF Brighton and later RAF Binbrook, the squadron was equipped with Lancasters and predominantly took part in bombing operations over enemy-occupied territory in Europe. Kerby's first mission took place a week later, joining his new squadron when he and his comrades attacked the German industrial city of Mannerheim. The city was a manufacturing centre that was central to the enemy's war industry and was also a vital railway junction. The attack was a huge success for Kerby and his comrades and resulted in the destruction of multiple industrial sites, many of which burned for several days after the attack. Over the months which followed, Kerby and his comrades were involved in numerous similar attacks which were designed to target and destroy the enemy's war manufacturing efforts. On the 27th of January 1944, Kerby and his comrades were called into action once more, this time for an attack on the German capital, Berlin. Their Lancaster JB 637 was one of 144 aircraft to take off from the squadron's base at Binbrook, flying in very cloudy conditions. Numerous searchlights threatened to expose the aircraft. However, they encountered very little flak resistance from the enemy. The attack itself was largely successful, resulting in further destruction in the city, which was evident from the glow of fires reflected on the clouds above. The operation was costly, however, as 12 aircraft failed to return. Among them was Pilot Officer Kerby and the crew of Lancaster JB 637. Reported as missing, the squadron's commanding officer wrote to Kerby's wife, Your husband was very popular in the squadron and had carried out his duties in an extremely conscientious manner. It may be of some consolation to you to know that a number of missing airmen are eventually found to be POW, and I hope I will have the pleasure of passing such good news on to you before long. Over the months which followed, no further news of Kerby or his comrades came to light. By October 1944, the entire crew was presumed to have been killed in action during the attack on Berlin 10 months earlier. Their fate was not able to be confirmed until after the war's end, at which time German records were unrecovered and which revealed that Lancaster JB 637 had been shot down in the vicinity of Stulken, southeast of Berlin. Despite this recovery, however, military authorities were not immediately able to recover the remains of the crew, as the crash site was located in the Russian-occupied zone. It was not until 1951 that Kerby and his comrades were able to be located and buried in a military cemetery. Today they lie in a collective grave in the Berlin War Cemetery in Germany. His wife Patricia selected the following inscription in remembrance of James. Beloved husband of Pat, dear dad of Valerie and Dennis, thy will be done. Pilot Officer James Kerby was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Pilot Officer James Allan Kerby, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post-ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.